it right there. Hello studious minds, and welcome back to Pagan Philosophy, the channel where we strive to further our understanding of what it truly means to love knowledge. So, you guys really liked that Theurgy video, so I want to make a Theurgy series. Maybe. I want to talk more about Theurgy, and I want to help you guys better understand it, and also learn about it more myself. So, Theurgy. What was Theurgy? I made a video kind of covering it. You can check it out. It's basically philosophy meets magic, meets religion, meets a bunch of things. But most importantly, it was contemporary religious practice rooted in the religious traditions of the time. And of course, it was born in the Roman Empire. And important to understanding Theurgy is understanding Iamblichus. Iamblichus of Chalcis. He was a Syrian from what is modern-day Lebanon. He developed a philosophical system that incorporated things like mathematics, but also drew the majority of its meat from the contemporary religious traditions of the time. He was born 250 AD, circa, and would have died circa 330 AD. And the branch of philosophy we associate with him is the Iamblichus and Neoplatonism that we call the Syrian branch of Neoplatonism, because he was a Syrian. A lot of lesser works by him survive. However, the majority of his worldview we understand from his student Proclus, who was another heavy hitter in the Neoplatonic tradition and the Theurgic tradition. Again, we made a video on him. It was the last video we made, so check that out. Has a lot on Proclus. But of course, Iamblichus's major work, written work, was on the Egyptian mysteries, where he made an attempt to reconcile the religious traditions, the rituals that were largely rooted in Egyptian cult, and see the symbolic nature underlying them that made them valid for philosophers to practice. But we credit the biggest change to the original Neoplatonic system attributed to Plotinus, we credit to Iamblichus, and that change was Theurgy. It was the ritual magic that he started to incorporate, whereas Plotinus was more interested in focusing on the intellectual pursuits underlying philosophy, the contemplative aspects. Iamblichus was more concerned with cult. He was more concerned with religion. He was mostly concerned with getting closer to the gods through ritual. Now, but more importantly, while Plotinus was also viewed as a polytheistic pagan by Christians, Iamblichus really was polytheistic. He was really interested in incorporating the syncretic pantheons from Syria and from Egypt and from Greece and from Rome and from Anatolia, and bringing them together to make this new pantheon of gods that resembled philosophical principles. And so in Iamblichus, polytheistic cult was immediately married to the philosophical tradition that extends back to Plato and even before him to Pythagoras. He found a way to mesh the natural philosophy and the natural sciences of the era with the myths, the deities, and the rituals and sacrifices of the temples and of the priestly caste into one monster of a philosophical tradition. But most importantly, Iamblichus found a way to, so did Plotinus, but Iamblichus found a different route in incorporating the material world with the spiritual world. So Theurgy claimed that Iamblichus claimed that there was chains of causation, chains of emanation, that starting from the forms, which could have been viewed as the gods, that emanated down to all their physical manifestations. So you could have the form of light, in the form of knowledge, in the form of truth, in the form of the sun that emanates down into the physical sun that we see. But the physical sun would itself have this intelligible chain that linked it to the form of the sun. Likewise, various herbs, symbols, sounds would have been linked to their symbolically corresponding form. And likewise, all material things would in one way be chained to their precedent god. And so by using physical tools, we could access these chains and kind of climb up these ladders, these chains, utilize them as ladders to the gods, to the forms, and ultimately bridge the gap between us and the one. But most important to this, it's not just going through the motions. Iamblichus made it clear that it was just not about mixing herbs or burning the right incense or having the right statue made out of the right ingredients. It was about understanding the symbols. It was nothing unless your mind was involved. Because remember, the ultimate goal at the end of the day for these Neoplatonic philosophers was to bind with the one. It was to reconnect with the one, to assimilate unto the one. Now, Theurgy got really popular. It even got into the imperial palace under the Emperor Julian. Eusebius of Mindus actually accused Julian of leaving the Platinian, the Plotinus, intellectually centered philosophical tradition of Neoplatonism and moving towards the more ecstatic, eccentric, theurgic tradition, because he was impressed by the wonder workings of Maximus of Ephesus, who himself was a philosopher, but was really involved in religious traditions, very much associated with the Theurgy of the era. So Theurgy was all about, it was about magic. It was about finding a way to manipulate the gods, to bring them, to make them manifest physically. Now, there was some correspondence that we have to this day between Porphyry and Iamblichus, where they actually debate over the validity of Theurgy. Porphyry felt, who was Plotinus' student, Porphyry felt that Theurgy can be used as a bit of a stepping stone, an on-ramp to philosophy, basically. But eventually you would shed off all of that ritual baggage, because it's not necessary. What's necessary is the understanding. Iamblichus agreed that what's necessary is the understanding, but he said since everything is linked by chains, it's these chains that'll take us there, not our minds. It's our minds coupled with the religion that elevates the body, the material body, to the level of nous, to the level of soul, and then ultimately to the level of the intellect, where the gods, the big gods, reside. Porphyry disagreed with this. Porphyry was more in line with Plotinus. Iamblichus started this newer, more novel Neoplatonic tradition that Proclus would expand on even more, adding more gods to the system, adding more gods to Iamblichus's pantheon of philosophical principles. But for example, an important theurgic ritual would have involved animating statues. So again, the statue, it's nothing unless the god is made manifest in it, unless the god comes into the statue, right? So what would happen was you would have to use the proper invocations to the correct deity that the statue would embody. You had to stuff the appropriate herbs and resins into the statue and perform the proper ritual in the correct manner over the statue. And the statue would become imbued with the god itself, with the principle that the statue represented. And we call this animating statues. This was how one really interacted with the gods. And Julian, who we kind of say was the last true polytheistic emperor of the Roman Empire, during a theurgic ritual with Maximus of Ephesus, experienced the animation of one of these statues. I think it was the statue of the goddess Hecate. The goddess, the statue itself came alive. Of course, the statue didn't really come alive. What would have been understood was the goddess herself was made manifest through the statue. The statue was just a medium by which the goddess could interact. Iamblichus argued that the gods are not really being manipulated. What we're doing is not controlling the gods, but allowing for the proper conditions for them to be able to manifest themselves, because we need to purify space. We need to make it so that the gods have a proper abode to reside in and to come and interact with us. And of course, Iamblichus would have claimed that this was why we have temples, this is why we have shrines, why we have altars and images, idols of the gods. These things are made holy. They're sacred spaces set apart from the profane, allowing us to find a place where the gods can reside and where the gods can know that they will have a purified space. But Iamblichus' theurgy, it was viewed under the Iamblician Neoplatonists as no different than mathematics. They're both the same. They're means by which we get to the intelligible gods. They're means by which we interact with the forms or the abstract entities that are the gods, the abstract entities that order all things. These abstract entities are the reason why we have order in the universe, and all things are not just chaos. Plotinus, of course, felt you do this through contemplation, and you do this through purely intellectual pursuits, while Iamblichus developed this ritual framework by which we could ritualistically contemplate the gods, but more importantly, incorporate magical powers into our practice and help purify us and purify space so that we can find the gods better. So, if you have more questions on theurgy, let me know. I can make more videos about them. I like researching the topic myself. It has a very important place historically in the Platonic tradition. Of course, this was at a time when Christianity was spreading rapidly, and so naturally the non-Christian philosophers that were called pagans would have found a way to latch onto their sacred tradition, their traditions, and mesh them with their academic and philosophical notions, so that together they could have something that can compete against Christianity. Because that's what Julian was really trying to do. Julian the Emperor, he wanted to find a way to organize polytheistic, traditional, conservative cult with this new liberal rising Christianity, and find a way to structure a hierarchy that can compete with Christianity. Of course, at the end of the day, polytheistic religion lost, Christianity won, and theurgy, as a result, went underground and slowly faded away. But let me know if you guys like this video. Feel free to comment below. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. Hopefully I can put out more videos on theurgy and more videos on Iamblichus and some of the theurgic philosophers, and maybe we can learn more about specific theurgic rituals together. Of course, it was a mysterious practice. It was a secret practice, and so naturally we don't know so much about it. But there's some stuff that we do know, and I'm more than willing to keep sharing, so if you guys have questions, let me know. But until next time, friends, stay studious.